Greetings, everyone, zombie fans. Thanks for joining us for the 56th episode of Reanimated. And we are here on a bright, early Saturday morning to talk about episodes 7 and 8 of Reanimated. We're also going to talk a little bit about some zombie news. Since yesterday was Halloween, we are being inundated. And we're doing all of this with our favorite special guest, Mr. Kyle Diaz. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Stuart?
Wonderful. Watching the sun come up in Sonoma County. And where the sun is already quite high in the sky, H.A. Conrad is also with us from New York. How's it going?
It's going well, but there is no sun here today. It's like the dreariest All Saints Day ever.
Is there an occultation going on?
There is.
Bar the doors and the windows.
Always do.
Okay, I'm sure you do. So this power trio is going to be hammering out some zombie news and zombie reviews, but we're doing it with help from our buddies over there at Squarespace, which is the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own professional website. And we have an offer code for new users of Squarespace. If you want to make a professional-looking website, you can go and set that up and use the offer code ZOMBIE at checkout, and you'll receive 10% off. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Always awesome.
So awesome. The awesomeness does not diminish.
By the way, I had to go for like round 2 or 3 of coffee this morning. I don't know what's up, but so glad it's daylight savings time tomorrow. Exciting.
Right, falling back.
Wait. Are you one of these people who likes the winter daylight savings time?
No, I hate it.
Oh, okay.
I'm dreading it. So.
Oh, that was sarcasm.
Yes.
Ah, I see. I thought it was legitimate. I was like,
I have a pretty dry delivery.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that sounds like you really are into it. Okay, cool.
No. No. Daylight saving time. It involves me like, okay, I need to start going to the gym at the morning at like 5:30 a.m. just because, like, I need that much sunlight in the day. I have to get as much as possible.
I do appreciate that it's late in the morning when you wake up, which is like good for farmers or whatever. But I just hate walking out of work at like 5 o'clock or 5:15, and it's just pitch dark.
I know it's
so
terrible.
Depressing.
Yeah, but we'll get through it.
It's true.
It is a little. It's a bit of a bummer because, yeah, I don't like waking up and walking around in the dark. But it was worse in Europe for sure because we're a little further north, and you'd be out at dinner and having a good time, and suddenly you look at your watch and you're like, oh my god, it's 10:30, we're still at a restaurant, and it's still like totally nice and bright out, or like twilight. And the flip side was true too. You could basically be living in darkness for a good 2/3, if not 3/4 of your day.
Which, based on these episodes of the Strain, is doubly terrifying.
Doubly terrifying. So let's talk about our zombie news and then dig into For Services Rendered and Creatures of the Night, which are the 2 episodes we'll be talking about today. And when we get there, guys, this is going to be super spoilery, as all of these reviews have been. So be warned.
Be warned?
Be warned. First up in news, however, we've got because of the season and the internet being what it is, yet another real estate company has made a map of least survivable, in this case, or most appetizing cities in America. In this case, Trulia came up with this one. When the world crumbles and you become a member of The Walking Dead, what city should you shamble to? So it's actually an infographic for zombies. And so they've got the 25 top cities in the United States based on some weird criteria. Higher hospital density, more congestion, fewer hardware stores, and high walk scores. Because, zombies like to walk on well-manicured sidewalks and bike paths and things like that. I guess it's no surprise that New York is up there, but Honolulu actually takes the cake for being the most appetizing city in the United States. Did you guys have any reactions to this list?
I just think it's hilarious that the implication is that as a human, where you should be is none of these places. It's actually not an advertisement for any one place being, a better zombie place. Yeah, even I'm sure number 25, El Paso, is not as good as, like, I don't know, rural Nebraska or something. So
Although I have to say, I was just driving through El Paso last week, and I don't know that that's a good idea in any scenario.
Zombie apocalypse or not?
Yeah. It's because it's like right on the border, right by, like, just across the border from Juarez. So I don't know. But hey, maybe they do have weapons to fight the zombies.
I don't see how New Orleans is even on this list. There's like 400,000 people living in New Orleans.
Mm.
That's not even really a big city. It's absolutely not a big city. That's like slightly larger than Santa Rosa here in Sonoma County.
I do think it's pretty funny that the comment section is just full of people shitting on other places. It's like
Yeah,
that
I know.
people's tribalism about where they live is like so strong that they see a list like this and they're like, "Oh, I'm glad I don't live in Detroit like those dumb, like
Yeah, I
bastards."
know. But you know what? The thing is that New York always ends up in the bad part of these lists. So it's kind
True.
of just easy. It's
Mhm.
an easy target.
Well, after how many movies, in how many movies has New York been destroyed in some sort of cataclysm or another? So I think
Mm.
we're all just pretty much we're ready and willing to accept that it's not going to be long for this Earth when this kind of stuff happens.
San Francisco too. San Francisco seems to be like the recent whipping boy, like in
Mm.
the Planet of the Apes movies and
Hmm.
in the new Star Trek movie and like all kinds of things are just blowing up San Francisco for no reason.
That's true.
People like to see the Golden Gate Bridge in some sort of disrepair.
True.
Hmm.
I feel like the Godzilla.
Oh
If
God, Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
if not complete collapse, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough about that. It's a silly list. Let's not talk about it.
We'll come back to it when we're members of The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
bookmark it in
Clearly.
my
Put
when
it,
I become a zombie.
keep it in a browser tab so you can come back to it when you're a zombie. That's a good idea.
I'll be like, oh yeah, Honolulu.
Oh, let's get over to Honolulu. So the Huffington Post. HA, do you want to discuss this appetizer?
Uh,
This
appetizer.
this article?
Hungry much, Mr.
Much.
Tiffin? This is just one of those listicles that is, you see them around this time of year, and it's basically how to survive a zombie apocalypse, according to the Huffington Post. Really not much on here other than the normal drivel. Um, such things as Watch Zombieland is on this list. I just thought that the interesting things, that, in terms of like it, ideas about what goes on in some sort of an outbreak like that. It's like you should check your Facebook to see where the outbreaks would be occurring, right? And weird crap like that. Um, I don't know. It's just kind of garbage, but I threw it on there just because this is the kind of thing that we see at this time of year all the time.
Yeah. The amount of gifs in this article strike me.
It's impressive, right?
Yeah.
The one of this zombie just blinking is freaking me out.
I'm assuming that's an early, or maybe that could be a prison season Walking Dead person waking up after the.
It is creepy.
It's bad.
That's probably the creepiest thing about this whole article.
You really only need to watch the first, what, like 10, 15 minutes of Zombieland? How long do those credits last? That
Some
like voiceover section at the
I
beginning.
guess they
where
do
it's-
repeat rules, but don't they introduce new rules further in? I can't remember.
Not
from
many
our review.
rules, a couple of them, but
Oh, okay. It's been a
Always
while
check the
since
back seat. I feel like doesn't happen
Yeah.
until later on and stuff like that.
yep.
So yeah, Huffington Post getting in on the stuff.
And the GIF action.
Yeah, I mean that the article is okay, but the GIF game is really strong. So
They really brought it with the
yeah.
gifs.
that's good for them.
I'm glad none of us are pronouncing it GIF, or I might have had to just stop the podcast.
Kicked
That's
off as a GIF.
that's actually the real way you're supposed to say it.
I know that that's the case, but I hate it, and so
I know.
I
It's
rebel.
because you hate Jif peanut butter.
No, I wouldn't say that I do.
I never really bought this argument that the person who made it gets to name it. Like, whatever. Like he made it and he put a name on it, and the name was dumb, so everyone changed it. It's just how it goes.
I think that sounds appropriate. And another thing that it might be appropriate, or might not be, is the first look at the Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies movie that's coming out, and it's really just a still shot. But based on this, based on the photo, I'm thinking okay, and then based on the text, when I read that they're doing roundhouse kicks dressed like this, then I'm a little bit less okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not okay with the whole Pride and Prejudice and zombies thing in general. So, Kyle and I were talking a bit earlier about how, more power to the author for coming up with the idea that he could put out content that was basically somebody else's and just interject his terrible writing. But I don't know that a movie needed to be made of this. And I mean, and I love Matt Smith. I think he's great, but I don't know. This is a this is a tough one for me to deal with.
Who is this person that you love?
Matt Smith, the Doctor.
Who
From
is?
Doctor Who. He has a very
Doc-
long face. Wears a
yes,
fez.
he is a bit.
Oh, that guy.
He does have a very big head. Um, and apparently he's in this.
The
And
craziest thing to me about this article is that David O. Russell was at one point attached to write and direct. I have to think that was between his like I Heart Huckabees to the Fighter like exile from Hollywood, because the last couple of years he is not slumming it by writing and directing Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. He's like making like multiple Oscar-winning films like American Hustle and Silver Linings Playbook. So I was kind of I was frankly shocked. I was like, what would David O. Russell be doing with this movie? But I guess he dropped it because he has better things to do these days. But
or you realized that it was just utter crap. Lena, is it
Heedy.
Headey from Game of Thrones or whatever is supposed to be in this too. So I mean, they have an interesting cast. I don't know. I'm down on the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Clearly.
Obviously. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not out yet. We'll take a look at it maybe and figure out if we even want to touch it for a review when that day comes.
Oh,
AJ.
I know you want to touch it. You've already said that you want to touch it.
When you say it that way, it sounds weird. But yeah, okay.
And speaking of adaptations, you found this clip, which was a little bit of a behind the scenes of the Strain. It was a bit of Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan talking about, the making of the television show as it differs from the books, and it was interesting to hear some of their commentary.
Yeah, the clip of Guillermo del Toro saying that this is the most fun I've ever had writing, and like I know these characters better than I know any character I've ever worked with on screen. I thought that was telling, and the fact that so for him to rewrite some of this, he feels like it's still probably completely in canon because they're his characters and they're his babies.
Well, I think honestly, if you have any show that is adapted from books, be it Walking Dead or Game of Thrones, if you have the creator in there, I know people get very upset at George R.R. Martin about some of the things that he has done or the writers have done with Game of Thrones, but you kind of, I mean, if you have the creators there and dealing with it, I don't know that you can make an argument. And there's just no way that you can fit everything in the way it is in any book into some sort of television series or movies. So I think it's cool that both he and Chuck Hogan are involved in this.
I think you got a better shot at getting a more completionist attack with TV than you do on film. Although I'd be
Agreed.
curious to see what a Tolkien rewritten screenplay would have looked like for the first three Lord of the Rings movies.
yeah, I think they pretty much chucked that out when Peter Jackson came back on, which is really too bad.
Yeah. But it was cool to see. However, I will say, and I was thinking this while watching the um, the last couple of episodes, and I've thought this during the whole series, is that it's supposed to be in New York, and clearly this is not being filmed in New York. So,
Is that apparent? I haven't noticed.
oh, it's so clear. I mean, it's from the subway stations to the other thing. It's just so clean, and there's just this sort of grounded thing you get, especially in New York subway stations, that they definitely don't have here. So, um, but I digress. So, are you two ready to talk about our next two episodes, episode 7 and 8 of The Strain?
Golly gee, yes.
Woot!
So episode 7, our kickoff point was titled "For Services Rendered." Director was Charlotte Sealing, and the writers were David Weddle and Bradley Thompson. And this aired on August 24th. Audience 2.43 million. It's bumped back up from where we left off last time, HA, which was around 2.07 or 2.03, I think.
Mm.
And so, do you guys have initial impressions from this episode?
Well, I mean, just from the get-go, I was very excited to see Chief from Battlestar Galactica
Yeah,
show up.
right.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. And he
I was
plays.
excited and then dejected.
Me too, because he has a very brief cameo in this strain, but he plays Joan Luss's husband. Joan again is the attorney, one of the original survivors from the flight that we saw. So he bites it very quickly, as he did also in the book. But it was nice to see his face, at least for just a tiny bit of screen time.
He's a good actor.
And he was dramatic in what happened to him. So hey, but overall with this episode, I think they're trying to show the progression of the virus basically, and the spread of the disease, and it's also pushing along the storyline, seeing our group of vampire hunters sort of start collaborating a little bit more and start convincing other people to join them. I don't know. There was a little bit. It felt very slow to me, this particular episode, and it felt a little bit disjointed. I don't know what you guys felt about this.
That's funny. Well, I missed. I'm sorry. I missed the discussions that you guys have been having. I'm just catching up this week with the episodes themselves, so I haven't been able to listen to the episodes of Reanimated where you guys talked about 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 between when I was on the show last and now.
You were such a slacker,
I
Kyle.
know. But this show to me is like really just actually starting to get good right here. Like there were a couple episodes there in the middle where I was like, oh man, this is kind of a slog. This is kind of taking a really long time to like do anything. But I think with occultation last week and then with the 2 episodes tonight, like things really started to pick up. And I still felt, maybe it's because I watched them all kind of in a row, but I started to feel that like through this episode and the next one we're going to talk about. So I didn't find it particularly slow, and I enjoyed For Services Rendered a lot actually.
I'm with Kyle on this one. For me, this is kind of a turning point where we've got a couple of different storylines that really get pushed forward, as opposed to the episodes where I feel like it drags the most is where we have 100 different scenes and each story incrementally gets advanced. And in this one, I feel like the Luss household definitely gets a good push and an amazing finale in this episode. And then also the vampire hunters they do their first like high level offensive maneuver. I mean, they've been going to people's houses and offing the low levels, but this time they really try to take it to the man, as it were. And so I felt like the big plot gets advanced here.
I guess maybe slow is the wrong word to use. I guess I get a little bit weary of, F and Nora being needed to like we get it. It's a virus. Like, how many times do you have to tell them what's going on? Like, if I were Satrakian, I would be so annoyed with them at this point and just be like, okay, guys, I'm just striking out on my own because you just won't, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, they've seen enough where I feel like they should stop questioning what he's telling them.
Oh, I agree
If
with
that
this.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
so that's, I think, when I say slow, it's more like, okay, we've already covered this particular set of things. And yes, I understand what they're seeing is very scary, but they've seen more than so many other characters. So at this point, I'm kind of done with their questioning act. But
I totally agree that the characters like don't seem to be getting with the program, and they seem to be having the same problems over and over and over again, which does
Right.
not really make any sense. Like at the end of episode 8, which is the next episode, they're still having trouble killing people who have turned. Where I'm like, you guys were dealing with this like back in episode 4 or whatever, where you didn't want to kill people because you thought there was still like a brain inside them or whatever. But like these people's bodies have been entirely rewritten to be host to this giant worm thing. Like it's time to get over yourselves and just start doing what needs to be done. So I definitely agree that the characters are not kind of with the program, but at least the plot seems to be kind of leaving them behind to some extent. Whereas for a while I thought we were just, trapped in the hell of the religious like householders, stuff like that we were dealing with in episodes 3 and 4.
Well, part of part of
Sorry, go ahead.
the struggle of these characters, certainly for F and Nora, is like their medical background, but then you get these refreshing breaths of air from guys like Fett and people like
Mm-hmm.
Neva, which HA and I talked about last week. The nanny is also kind of like read in
Mm-hmm.
beforehand. She doesn't have a problem believing in evil and stuff like that. And Gus in this episode, he has a short kind of scene or two where the introduction and HA, I assume you enjoyed this long naked shot of Miguel Gomez, um,
No,
where
not really.
not only is he having to like bend over and expose his buttocks to the correctional officer, but he's also like he has three sentences that he kind of yells in his face.
Yeah.
He had a 6 foot frog tongue. He bled white, and he had worms in his blood. And the guy just looks at him like, "Yeah, you're
It
gonna have
was
to like dry out here in the tank for a while."
I did laugh out loud during that particular scene. It's true.
I love it when the characters get like too like just fed up with what's happening. They just can't take it anymore. I know this is going back a couple episodes, but one of my favorite moments of the series so far is when they're doing the autopsy on the
Yeah,
captain.
I know
And
exactly what you're talking
they
about
just
because we talked about this.
Jim just can't take it anymore. He's just like, this guy has a frog tongue and his dick fell off. I can't do this right now.
Yeah, and he also just like shit a bunch of
Oh
ammonia,
yeah.
I think, right when that happened. It's like, nope, sorry, I'm done. But yeah, these kind of exclamations of like, this is insane. But
Mhm.
nobody, and this is one of the most frustrating parts of the show at the same time, is that even when they're looking at the evidence, people are refusing to believe it. And this happens in episode 8 too. When we get there, we'll talk about that. But like, there's really, really insane stuff happening, but people are more fixated on what they expect to see, I guess. And so that's the problem that Gus has been having since he basically got rolled up with Felix in an alley next to the body of a vampire, like
Yeah.
a totally, well, mostly turned person. And the cops apparently didn't look at that body at all,
Yeah, and
based on this.
that's the body with a toe tag too. So it's one of the missing.
No, he was the medical examiner.
Oh, that's right.
But
That's
he's
right. Sorry.
covered in blood
Yeah.
and he looks like a freak show zombie vampire, like there's nothing normal about this body.
Hmm.
Either way, so Gus and Felix are in jail together. We know that this isn't going to end well in this
No.
episode, but luckily we don't have to spend too much time with Gus, which, as you said the last time you were on, Kyle, it's like every time Gus shows up, everything kind of slows down a little bit, and
In
that's
this episode, I was like, my God, miracle of miracles, a Gus scene that doesn't make me want to hit the fast forward button. Like, I thought
Because it was short.
the Gus stuff in this was actually tolerable, if not. I did like when the police show up and he's just like, oh, now you come. I was like, ah, yes, the strain. It's like remembering that it kind of wants to be a commentary on like our modern world, but just like can't really figure out a way to do it like consistently or without being like really, really heavy-handed.
yeah,
So he's like, ah, yes, racism, even in the zombie
Hmm.
apocalypse. But I did kind of like the ghost stuff in this episode.
yeah. And episode 7 also has a few flashbacks. We have 3 or 4 trips back to Treblinka, to the um, camp where we see now Satrikians making the box.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a couple different pronunciations of this name.
Hmm.
Satrakian or Satrakian. I think F and Nora both call him Satrakian at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and other people call him Satrakian. I don't know what to call him.
I like the Trachean.
I like Satrakian too.
We'll go with that. GIF. Satrakian. Other interesting elements of this episode. There's
Well,
Jim and
you've got
Sylvia. I didn't care much about her. You feel
well,
bad for her, but
and again, I'm kind of like, oh, hobbitses. Like, there's a lot of time spent with Jim Kent, and I'm just kind of like, we get it. You messed up. It just feels like just over earnest and over like it's overdoing the whole thing, which I guess we shouldn't be surprised. It is Sean Astin after all, but I mean, it just too much time even with that particular scene in the apartment with Jim between Jim and his wife was just so annoying to me. I was like, all right, well then move on. Move it along. And that is the point where I started to watch this episode in like time and a half.
I do think that this series has a problem with um, We end up spending a lot of time with people who then just die unexpectedly or don't end up having a real impact on the plot for a while. And maybe some of these people will get folded back in later, but I feel like we've spent a lot of time with a couple of different groups who I'm like, either these people are just going to die or I don't care about them, one of the
Right.
two. But I was seriously like so angry when um, like the one dude just gets beheaded and then his wife, the religious lady, hangs herself. I know I've mentioned it a couple times now, but when they come in the house and they find her like hanging there, I'm like, why did we spend all of last episode dealing with like your religious like convictions and watching you go through your like moral choices and lock this guy in the thing, and then we don't get to see the consequences of that play out at all because she's just dead, because I just guess the writers got bored of this plot line.
Well,
No,
honestly,
this
it's
happened
yeah,
in the book too.
it's a straight translation.
Straight translation. And so
Yep.
like here I'm like, why are we spending so much time with Sylvia, especially now that we know in episode 8 that Jim is going to die. So I'm like, will we even see Sylvia again? Like, or was this all just a giant waste of time? Like
Well, I mean, I think the purpose here is, to me, it's pretty clear. It's showing that he knew he had sacrificed an awful lot for her, but
Mhm,
now realizes that those sacrifices were wrong,
mhm,
and that there's bigger stakes. And so I think that was the whole purpose of this episode, but it didn't need to be this. And it was just, to me, it was just such a waste. And I guess it's to me, my thought was that they're trying to show you how much he knows that he messed up, and he's now even willing to lose the thing that he had, risked everything for,
It's his
mhm,
big
sold himself for.
reconciliation
Yeah,
episode, yeah. But the
mhm.
problem is that we don't really know or like Jim Kent enough to care that much, I guess.
right.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And then of course we also within this episode have Neva's interaction with her daughter, because her daughter's a nurse and a medical person, and she's trying to convince her and basically has all the answers, and her daughter's kind of like, "Mom, you basically kidnapped these kids. Let's bring them home." So
Yeah, there's a problem with that interaction too, where on the one hand, the daughter is like, we're gonna get sued by this family of lawyers who are terrible people because we've
mhm.
kidnapped their kids, and I kind of understand that. But and her mom is not saying the right things. She's just saying
No,
she's sick, and if she's sick, we have to keep the children away. Instead of saying she is insane and a
right.
dangerous person, and we shouldn't go there because I'm
Yeah,
scared.
yeah.
Uh,
No, she's not using this. She's not using her words in a strong
no,
enough manner.
no. So
So,
there's yeah, it goes badly.
however, the scene at the house is pretty cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, the scene with Roger Less arriving at the house and the cab driver
Hmm.
and everything, that's although the cab driver is so frustrating that he doesn't just drive away. He's like, "What's going on? What
I
is
know.
this? Huh?"
You
No,
get the idea that that guy had been wanting to shoot someone his whole career. Like he just
yep.
hadn't had the chance. Every time like anyone like tries to rob him, he's like, "You want to die today, punk?" And the guy's like, "Oh no, 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 no!" And he runs away. And the cab driver's like, "Man."
Well, you
Yeah.
know that there are these cab drivers. I don't know what the percentages are like, but there's always the cab driver who's so ready to jump out of the cab with like a tire iron and threaten
Mhm,
somebody. And this guy just has the gun, and that's his thing. But
mhm.
Yeah, but apparently doesn't know where the gas pedal is. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
or he's just not smart enough to be scared. Because you
mm,
see the frog tongue come out at your window, right next to your face. You're gonna get out of that car?
no, no, you're not. But then, the whole scenes in the house. I mean, I will say that Joan Luss's transformation, her makeup is incredible.
Yeah.
When we see both the shots of her when her husband comes home as well as when the kids come home, it is. I love how they reveal her. She's always kind of in darkness, and then she comes out of the darkness, and you see like the full effect of the makeup, and it's like, good job, well done, makeup team. She's terrifying,
Yeah.
and she's kind of the way her body is moving and the way her hair is all sorts of insane. Like they make her look really really good. So I think the effects during the scene are I and the horror of the scene, seeing your mom look like that or your wife look like that, just I think that they did a much better job here than they have done in other parts of the show, um, basically showing how that would affect people who knew that person.
Mhm.
Yeah, and is this the first time? I feel like potentially the first time we've seen the interaction of loved ones with a turned person when the loved one isn't like a grieving, insane father like it was
Right.
with the French guy. And so now we've
Mm.
got lucid people
Right.
looking at what's left of their loved one. And yeah, it is more powerful because we see the reaction, an honest reaction from Roger Luss, well portrayed by the chief. I wish I knew the actor's name.
Oh,
Aaron
Aaron
Douglas.
Douglas.
Aaron Douglas. Yeah, and that was really nice.
I really can't express to you how disappointed I was that he died right away. I was like, "Hey, Aaron Douglas, I'm so happy to see you getting like work after Battlestar, and I'm excited to see what kind of character you create." And then he just like dies in the first, like before the title credits roll.
Yeah, he's
But
actually been getting a little bit of work here and there. But no, I kind of was prepped for it just because I knew what happened with this character, and I'm like, but then when I saw him, I was hoping that, oh, maybe this is one of the characters they decide to keep on a little
keep
while, and then
around.
I was like, oh, nope, guess not.
Well, that's one of the things that Del Toro's talking about in that interview is like, yeah, some characters you bring them on for a short time and then you love them so much you've got to keep them. I'm like, where have you done that? I don't think that that's actually happened. You just keep
Yeah.
killing people.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's what we're here for, really. If everybody was happy and alive, then it wouldn't be a great show. And I guess that's an arguable point still. But we'll keep doing our review, and maybe you guys will come around.
I have a question. And maybe this might be like digging deeper into the details of the plot than you know really is warranted at this point. So just feel free to shoot me down if this is spoiling things to come later or anything like that. But so at the beginning of the series, there was a big focus on finding those four survivors, right? And the four survivors were um, the dad from the house, the little girl, the lawyer woman, and Bolivar, right?
In the pilot,
The
In the
pilot.
pilot. Okay.
The little girl wasn't a survivor.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah,
She
she
like
wasn't.
reanimated normally. So like, and then at some point, either in this episode or in next one, maybe it's in next one, Satrakian's talking about like how he's kind of explaining the mythos of the vampires a little bit, like 30 days to like come back to like normal intelligence, and like some of them are like super smart and super uh, like tuned in, like eye coursed, and like those are special ones chosen by the master. And so I was like, oh, those four must be the ones chosen by the master, and that's why they woke up first. Like when he was like doing his thing on the plane or whatever he was doing, like he selected those four to be his like thing. And then I was like, actually, no, wait, they're all dead. Like the lawyer woman gets shot at the end of this episode. The dad is dead. The captain is dead, and well, I guess Bolivar is still hanging out somewhere. So,
Yep.
um, it, was that just a feint that I was reading too much into the plot, or was the implication supposed to be that those four were special, and then it just turned out that they all got mostly. I guess we haven't seen Bolivar in a while, but mostly got killed before they had the chance to actually do anything useful for the master.
Well, Satrakian had said that they were basically a distraction. That
Uh,
if they didn't have the four survivors, people would be too focused on the dead from that plane.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So basically, he said it was the master manipulating the public.
Okay.
So these guys are basically, thrown out there as distractions because four did survive. So people are going to focus on why they survived as opposed to why everybody else died.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of the weird explanation we got. But I don't know. I don't get the sense that they were chosen. Did you,
I
Stuart?
think it's a 50-50. I think
Okay.
that yeah,
Okay.
eventually there's a chance that these guys were all picked for some reason. Of course, as you said, three of them are now gone, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's we did discuss this was a part of the breakfast meeting that F and Satrakian had in the last episode, Kyle,
Mm-hmm.
where he kind of he talks a little bit about why there were the four survivors and exactly what HH just said.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I guess other than everything we've talked about in this episode already, and the botched attempt to either tail or kill Eichhorst that happens at the end of the episode, obviously the elephant in the room is the insane vampire death squad
Oh
that shows
yes,
up.
which we leave the best for last though to talk
Yeah.
about. I mean,
So
this
this is
is
a beautiful piece of symmetry also because playing the lead Death Squad vampire is Stephen McHattie from none other than Pontypool.
I couldn't believe
yes.
this. I was like, I'd
I was
never heard of
so
this dude.
excited.
Never heard of this dude before I came on the Reanimated podcast, and now he's been in like almost. We have also talked about him yet another time at some point. I forget when, but we were definitely like, oh yes, and played by Stephen McHattie. Um, It must have been, I think it was in like a news item that we were talking about on an upcoming movie or something. But anyway, it was bizarre. Stephen McCarthy is showing up all over the place, but here almost unrecognizable beneath
Completely.
a mountain of makeup.
Yeah, but he is super creepy
His voice,
and
I mean, after
awesome in
being in
this.
Pontypool, yeah, his voice is just perfect.
Yeah. No, very, very
Well,
good.
that and the sound effects with the weird rattling in his throat and stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Perfect job introducing this character for all of the the frustrations I have with some of the characters on this show, and how much time we spend dealing with their like personal bullshit instead of the zombie apocalypse that's happening. It does do a very 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 good job with its just straight down the line, no compromises, badasses. Fett being my favorite, but this guy perhaps vying for additional badassery points by showing up with his Vampire Death Squad.
Yep.
Really awesome.
Yeah, and the range of emotions in this scene where it's like, oh yeah, we've been rescued, to oh my god, what have we been rescued by, and out of the
Mhm.
frying pan into the fire kind of a vibe. Um, I felt like this. And IO9, after this episode aired, there was a headline on IO9 that was like, yeah, the strain just went off the rails last night. And it's like, yep, that's
Mhm.
yeah, I would say that's true.
I love the appearance of these guys and how they appear. I was you know, because you and I have read the book, and like I was sort of like, I don't know how they're going to end this because this isn't quite where they had
No,
them in the books. So when this whole squad showed up, I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome. And they, their makeup was great, their precision was great, their weapons were awesome.
yeah,
Um, and then, as you said, we don't know whether they're good or evil, especially in how he kind of sniffs over the kids.
mm-hmm,
And
Mhm.
he's like a little creepy, like Mark Wahlberg in this, in like how he talks to the kids. It's almost like he wants to tell them to say hi to your mother for me. He's like, "Kid, are you okay? Hurt?" You know. And then,
yeah.
surprises us with the ending part of this scene. Not really surprises us, but probably surprises Neva
Yeah,
with
certainly surprises the nanny who was not expecting that.
no.
Not expecting to
Um,
have to say goodbye to her daughter, although she
Yeah.
didn't even get a chance. The one thing that I didn't really like in terms of their appearance was it's a little bit too much like the roadies from Public Enemy, standing in the background. I don't.
yeah.
They're just
True,
all
true.
standing at attention and not really. They don't seem very useful in that way. They're very imposing, but I'd rather they were doing something like checking corners or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem like they're a little bit lax, doesn't it? I mean, they're kind of just chilling. But no, I liked that ending of this episode, which ends with the death of Neva's daughter. But I was really excited to go into episode 8, hoping they would show more of these guys, and then they didn't.
And then they just disappear for an episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, all these guys do is show up and save Gus and then disappear, right? In the
Right,
first book.
right. So
So,
they do nothing with them. So at least, but that's why I was excited. I was like, oh, we get to see more of these guys. Excellent. But alas, not in episode 8. So
yeah. So, speaking of episode 8, however, are we ready to move on?
oh
The only
yeah.
thing I would say is we talked about this like very briefly, but I'll say that this is the first episode for me that the Nazi flashbacks actually added anything. There were some great moments here. The kind of drunken brawl, or not brawl, but like it feels like a brawl, even though it's not a brawl somehow, between Satrakian and Icorst in the past was just super fascinating, and the revelation that Satrakian is the one building the box, and I just this was the first time when I actually was not bummed out to be transported back to 1944, and I think that's really a credit to the guy who's playing Icorst, who just does an incredible job. Somehow, like his scenes um, with David Bradley in the present just like crackle with this energy between these two characters, between Satrakan and Icorst. But somehow, like so do the scenes like back in 1944, which things makes me think a lot more of it is coming from Icorst, because the guy who's playing young Satrakan is not like the most amazing actor ever.
Right.
Um, but like just they're interesting and tense, and you see this like way more human side. I don't know if it's like pre-vampire, post-vampire, what, but way more human side of Course than you have in his like very very composed current day facade. Just really really enjoy those and think they're doing a much better job with the flashback.
Well,
I
and
I agree that this third flashback is really powerful. From the weird pissing scene where he undoes his fly in the middle of their conversation to like defending uh, National Socialism to a Jewish concentration camp resident, and the pistol grabbing
Hmm.
setup that he does. All of this is like really tense, and yet when Satrakian tells him like I think the Third Reich is about to die, he's also just like, yeah, I think you're right actually.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it goes a long way into actually building up the backstory with these two characters and the relationship that they've had with each other, and it also builds up. It answers a lot of the questions, I guess, that I think some of us have had, or you see that energy between them, and I think this did a very nice job at showing why they are bitter enemies. Um, so it's I agree with you. I think that this was the better use of flashbacks that I've seen so far in the
Hmm.
series.
Anyway, that was my last note on for services rendered.
On to Creatures of the Night.
So you were saying how AJ, you were mentioning how you were annoyed that the rebel vampires, the vampire hit squad doesn't come back, and we don't learn more about them in episode 8. And I will agree that it was a little frustrating to kind of leave not just that plot line, but almost every other plot line behind in this episode. We got no
Mm-hmm.
Gus, we got no flashbacks to the concentration camps, we got no anybody really. But I did kind of like that they took the time in the middle of the series here to just have what's basically like a little mini horror movie here, and just kind of not resist the urge to like cut between a million different groups of people and just follow Satrakian, F, and Nora and Jim as they kind of attempt to survive the night, because I think we're going to really have this kind of like um, war, uh, like war pause as the night and day come from now on, basically, because there's enough of the Strigoi. And I was also really happy that they gathered everyone in one place finally. Like, we've been watching these characters wander around on their own, but it just feels really really nice to have, especially Fett, um, kind of join up with the main group, and then Hacker Woman. I have all kinds of problems with fucking Hacker Woman, but I guess it's good that she's there too. Um,
Well, you're hearing me sigh with like annoyance, not because of what you're saying, but I agree with you on some of those points. But I also felt like this was one of the more annoying mini horror stories that I've ever seen.
mm,
Um, Again, it's that feeling that this group, especially F and Nora, and even Jim, should be understanding a lot more of what's going on. They should have their act together and not be questioning things as much as they are at this point. And even when they go and they end up they're going on a mission to get some of the sort of gather up supplies and the ultraviolet lights and things like that. They run into Vasily and rather Fett, and he's totally on board. He knows what he's doing. He has a plan, and they just seem very disjointed. And again, F is one of the most annoying characters on this entire series to me. And he's constantly questioning and saying stupid things at this point. And I know that it's the whole science can cure things and that kind of thing, but again, they have seen much more than anybody else here. And now they also have Jim Kent who can fill in some of those puzzle pieces, and they have also seen this is they've also seen Satrakian be all kinds of weird and subway jumping,
mm-hmm.
and they
Or I
see
coursed, I
I
guess.
course, yeah.
sorry, Eichhorst, and Satrakian explains it by saying, "Oh, well, he can move that quickly, and he's this invincible because he's older," and that explains the different levels as he did in the last episode. But and they end up at the one place, but they're there forever, and they do stupid things, and it just felt very slow moving to me. And yeah, I guess you can argue that people do stupid things in horror movies too, but this just seemed like really the whole piece just dragged for me.
I,
And Dutch, ugh. Give me a break. But
Some of this is
I'll let Stuart jump in here.
oh,
But
okay.
I just there were some good things with this, and I liked some of the things that happened. I just wish they'd happened a little bit more quickly and moved things along. That's all.
I didn't feel like there was a pace problem when I first watched this episode, and the second time. I There are a couple of issues where you're like, why does Satrakian always make them fall back? Like he actually does it twice in this episode. He's like, okay, the first time when they go outside and suddenly more and more vampires are showing up, he's like, oh, okay, everybody inside. And maybe that's the right call. But as he points out, he knows that there's just more and more of them going to come. So why
Well,
not make
right.
a break for it right away? But inside the gas station, I feel like there's a cool tension going on, and there's the mixture of people, like people who know what's going on, people who are halfway on board, like F, and people who have absolutely no idea, like Ponytail Guy and Bread Guy and Dutch and her friend. Although
And
Dutch knows
what's
like
the name of the clerk?
Hassan.
Hassan, yeah.
Yeah, obviously no idea what's going on until the end, ignorant unto the end. Yeah, there's a lot of time spent in this gas station and the garage, obviously, but there are I feel like there's cool things that are happening all along. Like at the beginning of the siege, when you have the people running outside, Ponytail Guy, obviously, Brunette, who just gets away, which I thought was kind of a cool twist.
Yeah, it was
Well, it's a
interesting.
cool twist, but it's like, okay, so she just ran down the street and she's okay, and there's still not that many of them out there. So, guys, get it together. Let's make a run for it. But no, we're going to wait till the hordes show up. It's just a little bit, I don't know. It was the whole thing was like, oh, what are we gonna do? And it's like, well, you of all people, your group knows exactly what you need to do, and you're just wasting so much time. And I guess that's why I found it frustrating.
I did really like that they were like, oh, she got away. She's fine. She's going to be okay. I was like, she just ran out into the night full of vampires and made it like
Hmm.
50 feet and then disappeared from your view. Like, she's not okay. Like,
No,
she is definitely going to die tonight. She's not going to die right here.
I actually also, I don't know what they have against men who look like Kenny Rogers, but two of them bit it during this episode. The long-haired, kind of Michael Bolton-ish Kenny Rogers bit it, and then the working man Kenny Rogers bit it. It just felt like there were so many different pieces that all confirmed the same thing within this episode in terms of their situation that I was a little bit, bugged by. But I want to know why you're bugged so much by Dutch. I'm curious about this.
Because she's horrible. Like, first of
Yeah.
all, first of all, she's like, it was just a bit of fun. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, you pretty much knew that if you're going to script the cell system for everyone in Manhattan, like, maybe
Hmm.
people were going to die in the vampire apocalypse, but like, people were definitely going to die, right? Like, 911 calls aren't going to go through. Ambulances aren't going to know where to go. People's livelihoods will be destroyed because they can't deliver the goods and services. Like your reasons for doing things are not good. Also, what she's claiming to be able to do is just not possible, which is usually not a huge deal for me, but it's just so dumb. Like it's just so like let's just get a hacker in here because we need a convenient excuse to like eliminate the plot problem causing technology of the 21st century,
Hmm.
which is something horror movies have been kind of having to struggle with for a while. Like how do you have a truly effective horror when everyone carries, a communication device on their bodies at all times? And instead of actually trying to grapple with it in a kind of interesting or novel way, they're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. The cell system like is totally fucked. It doesn't work, except when it miraculously does at exactly the time that it needs to, and you can pump gas and stuff like that. And it was really just. I really just find that whole aspect of the show incredibly stupid and lazy. And then she is like just the embodiment of the stupidity and laziness. And um, I don't know whether it's a good choice or a bad choice that they've never actually shown her like doing any hacking as far as I can remember. Like she has the meeting, with the old guy, and then she shows up here, but like she does not. She's just not. Hackers aren't like that to begin with, and even if they were, they can't do the things that she can do. So I just found her incredibly infuriating.
I
Um,
think not showing her doing any hacking is definitely the right decision because that's
Agreed.
never a good part of any
no,
show or movie. It's
No.
so
but it's also weird to have a hacker character who, as far as I can tell, like it literally has never sat down at a computer on screen. Like, where is she doing her hacking from? This gas station?
Well, clearly she's using nanotechnology to infiltrate all the networks. She can just, use gestures and set it all off, right?
So that's why I think a lot of the reasons for my warm feelings for this episode do come because Vasily Fed is just so badass, and I'm so happy to see him like finally just taking vampires down. And you were talking about how annoying F and Nora are. Like, I feel like there's a couple moments in this episode, like when Satrakian is talking to Vasily, and he's kind of just nodding like while Vasily is talking, and the look in his eyes is just like, finally, someone who's not a total fucking moron.
No, it's totally, and he is the redeeming piece of this episode for me. Watching how he just takes control of the situation. He's always the one with the plan. He's just like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. He's very businesslike, and he definitely doesn't have all the whining that we see that comes from F, and even Nora sometimes. And he is somebody that understands the rules and follows them.
Is a really badass vampire finishing move where he like
Mm-hmm.
kind of jumps and swings down on their heads at the same time. Yeah.
The rebar thing, that scene where he takes out the vamp is pretty cool. When the vamp stands up and then his head's kind of bashed in. That was a pretty good job. I was like, I knew they were going to go there, but I was still happy when they did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the initial scene where they're actually outside the gas station shooting, there's a lot of shooting going on, and a lot of sword swiping, and there's only probably like 3 or 4 bodies when they're done with all of that, and it's a
Yeah.
fairly lengthy scene, so it's kind of like, well, these guys aren't very good, and Satrakian just proves that later when he's shooting at the guy on the electrical pole, and he's not hitting anything. It takes him probably 6 bullets to hit the guy. He probably is not the one you want doing the sharpshooting because he's
Quite
got like
old.
rheumatoid arthritis and actually he's had some hand injuries in the past, let's say,
Yeah.
without going into more detail. And
They made a big point of showing him dropping his pills at one point, but I don't know if we've learned what those pills are actually for. He doesn't seem sick yet.
Oh yeah, he has a heart problem, and
Okay.
I think Icor's mentions that too.
in the prison scene.
Yeah, so it's like those are nitroglycerin pills.
I see.
But he's much better with the sword than with a gun. I did notice that Nora was a terrible shot and then gets monumentally better within seconds.
Yeah, when she shoots a vampire twice in the torso, and then it gets back up, and F's like, yeah, aim for the head, because for whatever reason she doesn't know this, and then she's just like saying I'm sorry and really jerky shooting and getting a headshot right away. That was pretty cool, except not.
Yeah, not. But and also all the shooting around gas tanks. Very smart idea.
She said, "Watch out for the tanks" when they first went outside
Yeah, I know, but
shoot.
given what a shot all of them are, I'm like, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I mean, I guess this episode does prop that up in a good way, and makes me think even Dutch is as useless as she is.
We're supposed to
But
think that she's bad and useless, though. At this point, I feel like the reaction you're having, that both of you are having, and that I've had for most of this series, these are appropriate. Like when she's sitting in the toilet drinking a 40 instead of pouring them out. We're obviously like, yeah, she's a useless person and not a helpful person to have around in this situation. But we know also that she's involved, and so we kind of need her to stay alive.
yeah, one piece that I was laughing about in this particular episode was the Jim Kent scene where he's like trying to get the power adapter to plug in the ultraviolet lights, where it's just like takes forever. And I actually did like that scene because it was kind of hilarious. Where he's like, "Okay, now I have to find the power strip. Okay, where's the outlet?" You know what I mean? Like it was actually, to me, it was humorous anyway.
But
And realistic.
the ultraviolet lights are an instance of our hapless heroes like finally starting to think creatively about the situation that they're in. I know, and F and Nora are still mostly useless. Although I can't even tell you how happy I am. This is like something that we just edited out of our entire discussion of episode 7 because it was so annoying. But I can't tell you how happy I am that Nora doesn't have her dumb mom with her anymore. But like the ultraviolet light thing is a little bit. I don't know. They're starting in their own slow, unwilling way to adapt to the realities of the situation and take at least some of what Satrakian says at his word and make the leap that the ultraviolet light would kill the zombies. I don't know. I was a little bit proud. I was like, nicely done, guys. You guys are finally on the ball. Whereas Fed, in sharp contrast to them, immediately is just like, tell me what the rules are. Like, I just need to know
Mm-hmm.
what are the rules, and then we'll go from there. So he doesn't need any of that kind of scientific background. He's just a perfect exterminator. But I don't know. The ultraviolet light thing was a nice bit of creative thinking from our heroes, I thought.
They are finally getting their act together
Mm-hmm.
and not afraid to break into a medical supply center. And actually, that was the part where they were all kind of like doing their best work. Nora goes right up in Fett's face, who had a gun at in their faces a minute ago, and she's like, "No, you're going to give us half of them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just the way it's going to be." I mean, maybe that's more on Fett for being a good guy and letting them take half of his precious UVC lights. But then after they get those lights and they're plugging them in, and that's part of the reason why they're delaying at the gas station. I think before they can run outside, is they have to charge the lights up. That's at
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
least that's one way I can rationalize that they need to stay in there for half an hour or so. But after they do that, and then after Jim gets the worm in his face, and they do the surgery and cut it out of him, F and Nora are talking quietly in a corner at some point, and he's just like, "Yeah, I think we've come up with a way to
I
to
know.
stop the thing from spreading. I wouldn't want to call it a cure yet, but that like they're having this conversation, which is super premature, and I feel like
Yeah.
even for medical professionals, it's just like, no, I think we need to
Well,
wait more than 10 seconds after
and
you've cut a worm out of a guy before you can make these kinds of claims.
and there was a nice little like switch to Satrakian's face, which is just like, yeah, you guys have no idea. You know what I mean? Like he was just kind of like, yeah.
You feel like Satrakian's tried this before?
Or he just knows enough that he's just like, yeah, or he knows that they're gonna have to kill the dude. Like there's just no, he knows too much about this to be convinced that they've done the cure.
And in a nice little emotional beat, I thought that's kind of one of the reasons why F was so angry at Fett when he just kills Jim, out of nowhere at the end of the episode, or not out of nowhere, but like with extreme prejudice, I guess is the right way to say it. Is because it's not just Jim being dead. It's like kind of the like monumental failure of like F's whole medical background and attempts to actually save someone's life. Like it's basically just saying like all of your medical stuff that you think you can do, like your like first protocol or whatever, like no, F it, like you can't. It's not a possibility. So it kind
Right.
of explains some of his rage there at the end.
It does. I also do like how after Fett kills him and, F's totally outraged and going crazy, and Fett's just like, well, you know what? Your cure didn't work and he wanted to die. He didn't want to turn to one of those things. So this is what we have to do. And then he completely just lays it all out there, which, Satrakian actually has done that before. But this, I think, just makes it even more clear because Fett is not a crazy old man talking about vampires.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just basically saying this is how we get things done in this new world, and your science is not going to help anybody. So, and Nora has some of this problem too, and that's kind of been her issue all along is that she feels like they should be helping people. She's looking at it as a disease. Even F's comments to some of the people in the store, to Dutch, when Dutch is like, he said they were vampires, but you're saying it's a virus. And he can't even bring himself to say that they're vampires
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. He's like, no, it's a transforming virus. So I think, it'll be
It,
interesting to see what happens in the next episode.
it's just a semantics battle. But I feel like honestly that argument, we'll see like if he changes the way he speaks. But even at the end of this episode, he goes outside, finds the bread truck guy, and shoots him in the head. Right?
Yeah,
Like
no, very quickly. So you see
he's
he's
already
totally
kind of made a
switched.
turn there. Yeah.
Although again, I feel like it's a turn that he's kind of been making over and over again for the
True.
last like four
Yeah.
episodes. Like I kind of thought F was on board like right way back in the decapitations of the French people, but
Yeah, so well that was some of my frustrations that we
yeah,
keep seeing them
exactly. I
covering
think
the same
that's
ground. But
something you were talking about earlier, but yeah,
but in
These
this
are like
case,
freshly turned as opposed to like transformed, you know?
right.
true.
Also, this is somebody he knew. It's a friend, and it's a friend that had, in some ways, um, started to redeem himself for all the harm he did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that that's part of it too. Is that now it's personal. So.
So I guess we'll kind of see, like, if in the next couple episodes, you know, F and Nora is still kind of having this debate, I'm just gonna like sigh and throw up my hands. But from now on, it seems at this point, you know, after Bread Trick Guy, after Jim, after the French people, like F and Nora should be mean, lean zombie killing machines, like right, like they should be fully on board with the whole plan.
Yes, the Scooby team should be totally together and
Exactly.
operational at this point.
We shouldn't have to have this conversation anymore between Satrakian and F, where they're like going back and forth about can they be safe, can they not be safe, bullshit. Yeah.
We'll see, I guess. So, do you guys have any input on the final kind of like get out of the throw Molotovs and get out of the gas station?
Well, I was annoyed that the pumps actually worked. Although I was impressed that they did figure out an actual Brooklyn zip code to throw into the credit card machine. So, hey, it's a wash.
Okay.
I think sometimes the show takes itself a bit too seriously. So I was impressed with the fact that there were actually two pretty good jokes in that sequence. Like first is it makes him choose like premium or regular, and Fett kind of
Yeah, that
makes this
was
face like, fuck it, and choose premium. And then like they're like, what's taking so long? And he's like, it's authorizing. And so I kind of like that. You know, if the tone of the show got more jokey as things went more fully downhill and it stopped trying to like land an emotional impact with every single scene, like I would not be opposed. Like I think this show could stand a lot more like kind of dumb jokes while killing vampires.
Poor Hassan, however, might not have anything to laugh about after this episode. We don't even get to see his like curtain call. They just kind of run out, and he's still in there just with his flashlight and his tiny gun. Like, oh, what am I gonna do?
As far as I can tell, he lived in that box, and that's how he had no idea what was going on outside. Like he just never left.
he was
That
like
little,
kind of like a hamster in that box.
that little bathroom or something in there. Like,
Yep.
I assume there's a chance that he could actually survive in there until sunlight, and then. But yeah, I don't have high hopes for Hassan. And so yeah, they just drive. The craziest thing to me after this episode, after this shootout and now explosions and fires at the gas station, they drive off, and you can see like normal New York or whatever city they're in traffic, just like merging into the on the on ramp on the Long Island Expressway or whatever it is, and they're just like,
Which, by
okay.
the way, would never happen at this point. If the city was in as much turmoil, like, come on. Like, there's no way you wouldn't be in, like, bumper to bumper traffic.
Oh yeah,
of everyone
potentially.
trying to flee, basically.
Right. Because
Yeah.
at this point, there's enough panic and enough people think that something's going wrong that, you know, there would be no moving around this city at that point.
So, like, what percentage of the New York City population do you guys think is infected at this point? Like, because again, we've seen quite a few people who are not directly related to the kind of the main plot machinations. Like, for example, Vasily's coworkers, or like the delivery guy. I guess the delivery guy kind of probably was eaten by the lawyer lady. But like, there's plenty of people wandering around who are not like kind of first ranks of the infected, but like second or third ranks of the infected as it spread out. Like, what percentage of the city's population do you guys think is infected at this point? How many vampires are we really talking about here?
Satrakian guesses that there are thousands in the subway system.
Right.
So, what percentage of that is that of New York? Like 0.01 or something.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, if you have that many people riding the subway and depending, I mean, if you're looking at the rate of infection, I think it's a much larger percentage than they're kind of letting on.
Well, especially after this night, I guess. I was just surprised by how few vampires the master could get to the gas station. Like, it
Yeah,
kind of
it
seemed to
seems
me
like
that
it should be more.
if
Yeah.
he really wanted to throw everything he had at Citrakian, like they could have just covered the whole gas station of vampires, like on every. That was my only disappointment about the Molotov cocktail scene there at the end, is that, like, in the end they weren't really fighting that many. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
outside.
not not as many as should have been in Brooklyn at that point.
Yeah, not like World War Z, Israeli wall level of
Well, we don't
vampires.
want that, I think. We want like the ant CGI zombie method.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I really enjoyed this episode, and the big reveal of the vampire death squad at the end of the last episode made me think that these two episodes were definitely the two strongest in the series so far up to this point. And I know AJ that you're having a different kind of approach on this episode, but they went in a different direction from where they'd been going with all the tiny little cuts and scenes and stories everywhere all over the city, and kind of just focused on this one that was pretty intense little story here in the gas station for this episode.
I liked parts of it. It wasn't my favorite, and I wish they had done things a little differently with it. But I think it did do what it was supposed to do. And I agree with Kyle in that it was a relief not to be jumping from story to story and to kind of see the plot moved along just with our little group of heroes here. So I'm looking forward to the next couple. I'm still, I'm not anti the show. And I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, especially after the first episode. So I'm just I can't wait to see the next couple, and hopefully I'll be more impressed, and maybe there will be less Dutch. That's all, or maybe she'll get better.
We'll see. We forgot to mention that this episode was directed by Guy Ferland, written by Chuck Hogan, as it happens, and it was aired on the 31st of August, and only had 1.91 million viewers.
Ooh, going down.
Yeah, still going down. And I was trying to figure out like where that lies in the landscape of TV audiences, and I'm not super conversant
Yeah,
with how these
but
usually go. But like American Horror Story, for instance, season one never got below like 2.5 million.
yeah, but this is also when it aired was August 31st, right? So that's like Labor Day weekend. Um,
True.
so I can't, you especially on August 31st, everybody's like, I don't think you have a lot of people sitting in front of their televisions.
There's also might have been, I can't remember if it's this week or next week, but this airs on Sundays, right? Because that was, I guess the next week is kickoff for the NFL. All the NFL games started, so like Sunday
Okay.
TV always
Because the
always takes
next
a little
week it
dip.
goes even further down.
Yeah.
All right, our ideas are totally thwarted by your
By reality.
knowledge.
Okay. Well, Kyle, do you have any parting thoughts on episode 8 or 7 or 8?
Nothing. It just like there's many frustrating things about this show, but I do think it's really picking up the pace. I think especially occultation and for services rendered were kind of the best 1-2 punch so far, and it's still doing a really really good job at what it is kind of like best at overall, which is creating incredibly creepy little scenes that you are just totally repulsed by.
Yeah.
So as long as it continues to kind of deliver those and it doesn't, um, go off the rails too much with the rest of the stuff, then I'm totally willing to keep watching because that's just kind of fun.
Good. Good stuff. Okay. Well, we will probably wrap up our reviews of episode 7 and 8 here. However, we would love to hear from our audience. If you guys want to chime in on the conversation, you can do so on our website in the show notes at reanimatedpodcast.com. You can also email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And we are on Twitter at reanimatedpcasts, so you can always give us a 140 character holler there. Otherwise, HA and I will be back next week to review, or next time, rather not put a date on it, I guess, to review episodes 9 and 10. Kyle might be back here and there. We'll see. I don't know. Could happen.
I hope
Could
so.
happen.
I hope so.
Anything could happen.
Anything could happen, guys. Vampire zombie apocalypse. But otherwise, thank you for listening, and we will be back. So, adios.
Are we supposed to say bye?
See ya.
See you later.